That envelope wasn't just a letter. It was a declaration of war. The mailman stood at my front door that morning, holding a thick envelope, asking for my signature. Not regular mail. Not a bill. The kind of letter people only send when they want things to become official, cold, and impossible to ignore. I signed for it. My hand didn't shake, but something inside me sank. Ellen looked out from the kitchen window and called out, half joking, half serious, "Who even sends certified mail anymore?" I didn't answer right away. I had already seen the county seal before opening it, and I knew this wasn't going to be simple. I stood there at the door, tore the envelope open, and read every line, once, then a second time. By the third time, I finally understood what was happening. My dock. The old wooden one sitting right at the edge of the water. The one my father built plank by plank nearly 40 years ago. It had been reported in violation of shoreline land use regulations, potentially subject to removal. I folded the letter. I didn't crumple it. I didn't curse. I just folded it carefully, like it was some kind of official document back in my military days. Ellen stepped out and looked straight at me. She didn't need to ask much. One look was enough. "What happened?" I handed her the letter. She read it, slowly, then set it down on the table. "Who do you think did this?" I looked out toward the lake. The morning water was flat, almost perfectly still, peaceful in a way that felt wrong. I have a pretty good idea, but I didn't say the name. Not because I didn't know, but because I wanted to be sure. I've lived on Lake Everett for 18 years. Not some fancy resort, just a quiet lake in North Carolina, the kind of place people like me end up after we've had enough of everything else. This house, this land, and that dock, all of it is tied to my father. He wasn't a man who talked much. He built things, with his hands. When he finished that dock all those years ago, he said one thing, "That'll do for fishing." But to me, it was never just a place to fish. It's where I drink my coffee every morning, where I sit alone before the rest of the world wakes up. The only place that still makes me feel connected to him. And now, someone had deliberately dragged that into the light, just to turn it into a legal problem. If you've ever read HOA stories or Karen stories on Reddit, you know these things rarely start with a direct confrontation. They start with a letter, a rule, an anonymous complaint, and then everything escalates. 3 weeks before that letter showed up, things had already started to feel off, and at the center of it all was the woman living right next door. Linda Carver, the new HOA president. The one people around here quietly call the rule book. She moved in about 2 years ago. Not loud, didn't cause trouble at first, but give it a few months, and she had changed everything. Grass had to be cut to the exact height. Fences had to match approved colors. Outdoor lighting had to be aesthetically appropriate. The first time she came over, she smiled politely. Said she just wanted to maintain community standards. Then she looked at my dock. That look, I remember it clearly. Not disgust, assessment, like she was looking at something outdated. A week later, she came back, same smile. "Daniel, have you ever thought about renovating the dock? It's a little old." I said no. Short, simple. She nodded, still smiling, but her eyes weren't. A few weeks after that, she offered to buy a narrow strip of my land along the water. Said she was planning to upgrade the waterfront space. The price was below market. I refused. This time, she didn't hold the smile for long, just nodded, turned, and walked away. And after that, she didn't come back. At least, not directly. I stood there holding the letter, and one thing became very clear. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had to dig through old records, compare maps, read regulations, measure precisely. This wasn't some typical Karen complaining about tall grass or the wrong fence color. This was calculated, and whoever did it thought I would react like people in those Reddit stories. Get angry, panic, or get tired enough to give in. They thought I was just a 63-year-old man living quietly by the lake. They didn't know who I was, and that was going to be their biggest mistake. I've seen people like Linda before. but never this close. Never right next door. She doesn't yell. She doesn't make noise. She's not the kind of Karen you see in loud videos online. No. Linda is far more dangerous. She smiles while applying pressure. And she always makes everything seem completely reasonable. The next morning, I stood on my dock, a cup of coffee in hand, looking over toward her house. Linda's house sits slightly higher, just enough to overlook my entire stretch of shoreline. A deliberate design, a position of control. And then I saw it. 3 bright orange stakes, planted along the edge of the water on her side. I froze. Didn't sip my coffee. Didn't move. Just watched. Survey markers. Not something people put up for no reason. Ellen stepped out back, pulling on a light jacket, following my line of sight. "You see that?" she asked. "I just did. She's doing something." I nodded. This wasn't a guess anymore. It was certain. But what caught my attention wasn't the stakes. It was the timing. 3 weeks before I received the letter. 3 weeks. Not a coincidence. Linda had been preparing. I replayed every interaction we'd had. The way she looked at my dock. The way she offered to buy my land. The way she walked away when I refused. At the time, it all felt disconnected. But now, it fit together too perfectly. Too perfectly to be accidental. If you've read HOA stories or Karen stories, you recognize this type. They don't attack directly. They apply pressure. They push you into a corner. Then they show up with a solution. And that solution always benefits them. I turned back inside. Didn't go over to confront her. Didn't call. Didn't text. Ellen looked at me, slightly surprised. "You're not going to talk to her?" "Not yet." "Why?" I set my coffee down and looked straight at her. "Because if I'm right, she's waiting for that." Ellen stayed quiet for a few seconds, then nodded. She understood. She always does. I'm not the kind of man who reacts immediately. Not anymore. 20 years in the military taught me something simple. The one who reacts first usually loses. I needed information, not emotion. That night, I called Marcus Hale. We'd worked together on a civilian project after I got out. Marcus isn't a lawyer, but he understands land records the way a mechanic understands an engine. "Marcus, I need you to check something for me," I said. I gave him a quick rundown of the letter. There was a pause on the other end. Then Marcus let out a quiet breath. "Daniel, this didn't just happen. I figured. Give me a day. I'm not in a rush." I hung up, sat in the living room. No TV, no phone. Just thinking. If Linda was really behind this, then she wasn't just some typical HOA Karen. She had dug into records, understood the law, understood how the system works, and most importantly, she knew exactly where to strike. The next morning, Marcus called back sooner than I expected. His tone wasn't as relaxed as usual. "Daniel, I found something. I'm listening. Your dock. It was legal when it was built. I know. But in 2019, the county adjusted the easement line. I closed my eyes. Not surprised. And now, it's sitting about 4 feet inside. 4 feet. Just 4 feet. A distance so small, it's almost meaningless. But enough to become a weapon." Marcus continued. "The thing is, violations like this don't just get discovered." "What do you mean?" "Someone had to pull the updated maps, compare them to the structure, measure it, then file a detailed report." Silence. No need to say more. We both understood. "Marcus," I said slowly, "a regular person, could they do that?" "Not unless they knew exactly what they were looking for." So whoever did this had a purpose. I opened my eyes and looked out at the lake. The water was still as calm as yesterday, but it didn't feel the same anymore. "Thanks," I said. "Daniel," Marcus paused, "be careful. Whoever did this, they're not the type to stop halfway. Neither am I." I hung up. Ellen stood in the kitchen doorway, watching me. It was her, wasn't it? I didn't answer right away. I just said one thing. "No proof yet." Ellen sighed. "But you know." I looked down at my hands. Old scars. Years no one sees anymore. "Yeah, I said quietly. I know. I turned back toward Linda's house. Those orange stakes were still there. Silent. Precise. Intentional. She thought I was just an old man living quietly, avoiding trouble. She thought enough pressure, and I'd fold. What she didn't know was one thing. I don't fear pressure. I've lived in it. And if this was a game, she just made the first move. And me, I was just starting to understand the rules. 10 days later, they showed up to measure it like they were preparing to tear down a piece of my life. The woman stepped out of the county vehicle wearing a white shirt, a clipboard tucked under her arm. Her face wasn't cold, but there was no room for emotion either. The kind of person who works by the rules, not by the story. I'm Sarah Whitman, zoning, she said, her voice steady and professional. I nodded. Daniel Brooks. We shook hands. Neither of us smiled. Ellen stood behind me, watching in silence. Sarah got straight to work. No small talk. No politeness. She walked along the edge of the water, measuring distances, taking notes, comparing everything to the printed map in her hand. Every step she took felt like it was driving reality deeper into my head. The dock was still there. Old. Solid. Quiet. But, in the eyes of the system, it had become a problem. I stood behind her, watching. No interference. No questions. I've learned something. When someone else is gathering facts, you stay quiet. 40 minutes. That's all it took to turn something that had stood for nearly 40 years into a violation on paper. Sarah turned back and closed her clipboard. Mr. Brooks, she said, her tone unchanged. I can confirm that this structure extends approximately 4 feet into the easement under current regulations. 4 feet. It sounded light. Almost nothing, but enough to destroy. What are my options? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. There was a brief pause, like she knew the answer wouldn't be easy to hear. You have 3 options, she said. I'm listening. 1. You modify the structure to bring it into compliance. That means removing the portion in violation. I nodded. 2. You apply for a variance. But that process can take several months and approval is not guaranteed. And 3. If you do nothing, the county may proceed with a removal order. The air sank. Ellen tightened her grip slightly on my arm. I could feel it. Not strong, but enough to tell me she was worried. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Sarah. How much would the modification cost? Sarah shook her head slightly. I can't give an exact estimate, but for a structure like this, it could be between $15,000 and $20,000. The number didn't shock me. What weighed on me was the reason behind it. Sarah closed her file. I'm sorry, she said, and this time, I believed she meant it. You're just doing your job, I replied. She nodded and walked away. The county vehicle pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy. Ellen spoke first. What are we going to do? I didn't answer right away. I walked down to the dock, sat in the familiar folding chair. Everything was the same. The water, the light breeze, the distant sound of another boat. Only one thing had changed. The way I looked at it. I placed my hand on the wood beside me. Old scratches, nail marks, the faded wear of time. My father stood here once. Same spot, same kind of morning light. He didn't leave much behind, but he left this. And now, someone wanted to turn it into a technical violation. Ellen sat down next to me. Didn't say anything. Just handed me a glass of iced tea. We'll fix it, she said after a moment. Her voice was steady. No hesitation. I know. And whoever did this. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I don't believe in karma fixing things on its own, I said slowly. Ellen looked at me. Then what do you believe in? I took a sip of tea. Cold. Clear. Just like my thinking now. I believe in waiting for the right moment. The wind moved lightly across the lake. In the distance, I saw Linda standing on her dock, on the phone, smiling. An easy smile, no pressure, no concern. Like everything was going exactly according to plan. Maybe it was. 1 letter, 1 inspection, a bill for over $10,000. Enough to make most people give in. Enough to make most people sign whatever they're handed just to end it. Enough to wear people down. But I'm not most people. I've been in places where pressure isn't measured in money. I've been in places where one wrong move doesn't cost money. I'm not afraid of this game. I just need to understand it. I stood up, looked at the dock one more time, not with a sense of loss, but with a very clear thought. If someone put in the time, the effort, and the calculation to create this problem, then they're investing in something bigger. No one does all of this just for 4 feet. I turned back toward the house. Ellen looked at me. "What are you thinking?" I answered, my voice low and steady. "I think this is just the beginning." I didn't know Linda's full plan, but I knew one thing. If she started this, then sooner or later, she would need me. And when that moment came, I wouldn't be the one backed into a corner anymore. That phone call changed the entire game. Marcus didn't waste time. The moment I picked up, his voice was different. "Daniel, I think you should sit down." I was already sitting. "Go ahead." There was a brief pause. Not hesitation, just choosing the right words. I pulled the permit records from the county again, not just the easement part. "I'm listening." Linda Carver filed a pre-application about 6 months ago. I didn't say anything, but my hand tightened slightly. "For what?" I asked. "A commercial project." My heartbeat slowed, not faster, slower, like my body was shifting into a different mode. "Be specific." "She's planning to build a rental dock setup. Kayaks, canoes, possibly small boat slips. A kind of mini marina." The air in the room thickened. All the pieces started sliding into place. The survey stakes, the assessing look, the offer to buy my land, and the letter. "Marcus," I said slowly, "a project like that, what does it require?" "A lot," he replied. "County permits, environmental review, but there's one key thing." "I'm listening." "Signatures from adjacent property owners." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Marcus continued. "You're one of them." I looked out the window. Linda was out on her dock, talking to someone, phone in hand, standing straight, confident, like everything was already planned out. "Daniel," Marcus said, lowering his voice, "this timeline, it's not normal." "I know. She files 6 months ago. Then suddenly, your dock gets reported." "Not suddenly." "Yeah, not suddenly." We both understood. No need to say more. I hung up. Ellen was standing in the kitchen doorway. She had heard enough. "She needs you," Ellen said. I nodded. "And she's trying to weaken you first." "Exactly." Ellen stepped closer, arms crossed. "This isn't small, Daniel. If she builds that marina, I know, property values go up, traffic increases, control over the shoreline shifts. This wasn't just an HOA story anymore. This was money. A lot of money. And Linda wasn't just an HOA Karen who liked control. She was an investor. I sat down at the table. For the first time since that letter arrived, everything felt clear. Very clear. "She didn't report the dock because it looks bad," I said. "She reported it because it's a problem." Ellen nodded slowly. "And if you're under pressure, paying money, worn down, then when she shows up with a contract, I'll sign." We looked at each other. No need to say more. That was the plan. Simple, clean, effective. I stood up and walked over to the old file cabinet in the living room. Ellen watched me. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to read everything again." "Everything?" "Every page." Ellen let out a quiet breath. Half worried, half understanding. "You're stepping into her game." I opened the drawer and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "No," I said. "I'm finding the rules." I spread the papers across the table. Deeds, old maps, documents, from when my father first bought this land. The smell of old paper, the smell of time. For the next 3 days, I did almost nothing else. I didn't spend much time at the lake. Didn't watch TV. Didn't care what Linda was doing. I read, slowly, line by line. Some of it I had seen before, but never truly understood. Until now. Ellen brought me coffee. Set it down quietly. Didn't interrupt. She knew. When I get that quiet, I'm working. Day 2. Nothing. Day 3. I found it. A small line. Buried in an addendum from the 1970s. If you skimmed, you'd miss it. But I wasn't skimming anymore. Right of way. I said it under my breath. Ellen looked up from the couch. What? I didn't answer right away. I read it again. Then again. Then I set the paper down. Looked out the window, toward the part of land that belonged to Linda. My heart didn't race. But my mind was razor sharp. Ellen, I said. Yeah? I think. I just found something she doesn't want me to remember. Ellen stood up and walked over. What is it? I turned to her, my voice low and steady. A right that sits on her land. Ellen frowned. What do you mean? I smiled. For the first time since this all started. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile you have when something finally clicks. It means she's not the only one with a plan. I stood up, picked up the paper. Outside, Linda was still moving around on her dock. Confident, calm, certain. She thought she was controlling everything. She thought I was reacting, but she didn't know. I had just found something that could stop her entire project, with a single signature, or without one. And for the first time, since that letter arrived, I wasn't the one backed into a corner anymore. I was the gatekeeper. I didn't strike back right away. That was the moment everything started to change. Most people would have taken that paper, walked straight over to Linda's house, set it on the table, and told her the game was over. But I didn't do that. I've seen too many people lose just because they rushed while holding the advantage. I didn't need to win fast. I needed to win for sure. The next morning, I called someone I never thought I'd have to call. A lawyer. Her name was Rachel Dunn. Not the loud type, no advertising, no big sign out front. But around here, if you have a land issue, you hear her name. We met at her small office about 20 minutes from the lake. The space was quiet, clean, nothing unnecessary. Rachel looked at me as I walked in. Her eyes were sharp, but not cold. Mr. Brooks, she said calmly, I hear you're dealing with a zoning issue. I think it's more than one issue, I replied. She gave a slight nod and motioned for me to sit. I want to hear the whole story, from the beginning. So I told her. No embellishment, no extra emotion, just facts. The letter, the inspection, Linda, the marina project, and finally, the document, the right-of-way. Rachel didn't interrupt once. She just took notes, occasionally looking up, asking a short question, precise, right on point. When I finished, she sat quietly for a few seconds, reviewing the documents. Then she placed the paper down. This right is valid, she said. Her tone was firm. No hesitation, and it's still in effect. I didn't say anything, but inside, everything started to come into focus. What does that mean exactly? I asked. Rachel leaned back slightly in her chair. This right-of-way allows you to use a portion of Mrs. Carver's land to access the water. It was recorded back in the 1970s, and it has never been revoked. And that means? It means it's an encumbrance, a legal burden on her property. I nodded slowly. And for a commercial project. Rachel looked straight at me. It's a serious problem. The air in the room thickened. Rachel continued. A marina project, whether small or large, has to demonstrate clear land use rights, no disputes, no unresolved encumbrances. She tapped the document lightly. This is an encumbrance. So she can't move forward unless it's resolved? Correct. And how does she resolve it? Rachel didn't answer immediately. She studied me, as if weighing something. There are 2 ways, she said. I'm listening. 1, she convinces you to sign away that right. And 2, she sues, takes it to court. It takes time. It costs money, and there's no guarantee she wins. I let out a slow breath. How much money? Rachel gave a small shrug. Hard to say exactly. But if it turns into a prolonged dispute, it could reach $50,000 to $80,000. That's not a small number. Not for anyone. Even for someone investing in a major project. I sat there quietly. Everything was clear now. Rachel looked at me. "Mr. Brooks," she said slowly, "I want you to understand something. I'm listening. You didn't create this advantage. It was already there. You just became aware of it." I nodded. That's what I needed to hear. Not to justify anything, but to be certain. "I don't want to do anything wrong," I said. Rachel gave a slight smile. "Understanding the law is never wrong." Silence. A comfortable silence. Not like the tension from before. "What should I do next?" I asked. Rachel thought for a moment. "Nothing." I looked at her. "Nothing?" "Nothing." She leaned forward slightly. "You're in a strong position. A very strong position. But only if you don't reveal your hand too early." I smiled. "We think the same way." Rachel nodded. "She'll come." "I think so too. And when she does, you need to know exactly what you want." I stood up and gathered my papers. "I will." Outside the office, I stood there for a moment. A light breeze. Just enough sun. Everything looked normal. But underneath, nothing was normal anymore. I was no longer the man trying to hold on to what was mine. I was the one holding the key to what Linda wanted. And most importantly, I didn't have to go looking for her. She would come to me. I started repairing the dock, the moment I knew I was no longer backed into a corner. It sounds counterintuitive. When you have leverage, most people hold the situation as it is and use it to negotiate. But I didn't do that. I called a local contractor named Kevin. He had worked on several houses around this lake for years. He showed up Monday morning, looked at the dock, walked around it, tapped lightly on each plank like he was listening to the heartbeat of something that had lived too long. "You want to keep it or replace it?" Kevin asked. "Keep it," I answered immediately. He nodded. Didn't ask anything else. "I'll have to cut the back section. About 4 feet. I know. The main frame is still solid. No need to touch the core." I let out a quiet breath. "Do it." Kevin looked at me a second longer than usual. "No price negotiation?" I shook my head. "No." He gave a small smile. "All right. I like this kind of client." Work started the next day. The sound of saws. The sound of hammers. The sound of wood being cut away from its own memory. I stood there watching the back section come apart. Old boards, faded with time, falling away one by one. Each crack of wood felt like a cut into the past. Kevin worked carefully. "This is old but solid," he said while removing a plank. "Whoever built it knew what they were doing." I didn't answer, just nodded. I knew. One morning, Kevin handed me a piece of wood. "I think you should keep this." I took it. On the back, there was a small line carved by hand. 1987. My father's handwriting. I stood there. Said nothing. Kevin didn't ask. He understood. Some things don't need explaining. 3 weeks. That's how long it took to finish the repairs. 3 weeks where everything outside stayed normal. Linda still walked around on her dock. Still talked on the phone. Still smiled. Every now and then, she glanced over toward me. Just a quick look. Not long. Not obvious. But enough to say she was watching. One day, a neighbor from across the lake, Howard, stopped by. He stood next to me, watching the work. "Heard you got reported," he said. "Yeah." Howard nodded. "Everyone knows who did it." I didn't turn to look at him. "I don't care what people think." Howard chuckled softly. "You've always been like that." I didn't respond, but I took note of it. Reputation. In a small community, it has its own value. And Linda was slowly spending hers. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. Rachel sent me a document. 8 pages, a detailed analysis of the right-of-way. The language was clear, precise, not a word wasted. I read it twice, then printed 2 copies, placed them in a folder. Didn't use them. Not yet, but ready. The dock repair was finished on a Thursday afternoon. Kevin wiped his hands and looked at the result. "You still kept it," he said. I looked. The back was shorter now. The roof adjusted, but the dock was still the dock. Not perfect, But still itself. Good, I said. Kevin handed me the invoice. $13,800. I signed. No hesitation. He shook my hand. Not everyone manages to hold on to what they have, he said. I looked at him. Not everyone understands what they're holding. Kevin smiled, then left. That evening, I sat back on the dock. Same old chair, same old view. Only one thing had changed. I wasn't sitting there, like someone losing something. I was sitting there, like someone who understood exactly where he stood. Ellen brought out 2 glasses of tea, sat beside me. It's done, she said. Yeah. How do you feel? I thought for a moment. Lighter. Ellen looked at me. That's it? For now. The wind moved gently across the water. In the distance, Linda's dock lights came on. She still hadn't come, hadn't called, hadn't sent anything. But I knew. Not for long. Someone who has invested 6 months doesn't walk away because of silence. They act. And when they act, they need something they don't have. I stood up, looked at the dock one more time. Everything was fixed. No more violation. No more pressure from the county. Linda's game had lost its first piece of leverage. And now, she only had one move left. Come to me. I turned back toward the house. Ellen asked, "Are you ready?" I answered, my voice low and steady. I'm not waiting for her anymore. Then what are you doing? I paused at the door, looking out at the lake. I'm letting her step onto my ground. And this time, the rules will be mine. She didn't knock on the door right away. She sent an envelope first. It was sitting on the kitchen table on a Monday morning, thick, neatly sealed, with a clearly printed address from a company called Carver Development Group. I looked at it for a few seconds before touching it. Ellen stood behind me, arms crossed. It's here, she said. Yeah. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee first, sat down, let the envelope sit there like something waiting for the right moment. Ellen watched me. You're dragging this out? I'm controlling the pace. She didn't say anything else. I opened the envelope. Inside was a set of documents, professionally prepared, thick paper, sharp print, no mistakes. Title: Adjacent Property Authorization Agreement. I read every line. The Marina Project. Details: boat slips, kayak rentals, a small fueling station, a projected increase in property value from 8 to 12%, a market analysis, a promise, a vision, and on the final page, my name. A line to sign, a line to date. Not a single line mentioning the dock. Not a single line mentioning the letter. Not a single line mentioning the $13,800 I had just spent. As if none of it had ever happened. Ellen stepped closer. She doesn't mention any of it. No. No apology. No explanation. I shook my head. She doesn't need to. Ellen looked at me. Because she thinks you'll sign. I closed the document and set it on the table. Exactly. A piece of paper slipped out as I folded it. A handwritten note. Short. Written in a friendly tone. Linda said she believed the project would benefit the community. That she valued neighborly relationships. That she hoped I would consider it positively. Not a single wasted word. Not a single honest one. I set the note down. Ellen sat across from me. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window. Linda's dock was quiet, but I knew she wasn't the type to wait long. Nothing, I said. Ellen frowned. Nothing? I'm going to wait. You sure? I turned to look at her. I'm sure. Ellen let out a breath. You know she'll come. Yeah. And when she does, I'll be ready. 3 days passed. No calls. No messages. No more letters. But I saw her. Walking around more. Talking on the phone longer. One time, I saw her standing on her dock, looking toward my house longer than usual. Not the quick glance from before, but a stare. Evaluating. Waiting. On the 5th day, I was fixing a section of the back fence when I heard footsteps on gravel. Slow, intentional. I didn't turn right away. I tightened one more screw. Stood up. Wiped my hands. Then I turned. Linda stood at the boundary between our properties. wearing a light-colored shirt, clean pants, polished shoes, holding a bottle of wine. A small detail, but it said a lot. She had prepared for this meeting. A smile appeared when I looked at her. Not too wide, not fake, just enough to seem friendly. "Daniel," she said. Her voice was light, controlled. "I hope I'm not interrupting." I looked at her for a few seconds, long enough for her to understand I wasn't surprised. "No," I said. She raised the bottle slightly. "I thought we could talk for a bit." I looked at the wine, then back at her. "All right, We walked into the house. Ellen passed by, gave Linda a small nod. Didn't stop. Didn't leave. She stayed there, like a witness. Linda sat down at the kitchen table, placed the bottle on the surface. I didn't open it. I set down 2 glasses of water. Not wine. Linda didn't react, but I saw her eyes shift slightly. A small detail, but in games like this, small details are everything. She began to speak about the project, the potential, the benefits for the community. Her voice was smooth, confident, rehearsed. I listened, didn't interrupt, didn't argue, didn't show anything. When she finished, the room sat in silence for a few seconds. Then she looked at me. "You've reviewed the documents, right?" "I have." "What do you think?" I set my glass of water down, looked straight at her. "Before we talk about your project." I paused. Slow. "Intentionnel. I have a question." Linda's smile stayed, but her eyes changed. "Go ahead." I leaned forward, my voice low, clear. "Were you the one who reported my doc?" The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed too hard. Just one truth, waiting to be said. And this time, there was no way back. Her smile didn't disappear, but it tightened. Just for a brief moment. A blink that lasted a fraction longer than usual. A slight tension at the corner of her lips. If you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't notice. But I did. Linda leaned back slightly, keeping her voice even. "Daniel, I don't understand where that question is coming from." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. No anger, no tension. Just watching. "Do you not understand? Or do you not want to understand?" I asked quietly. Linda gave a soft laugh. A controlled kind of smile. "I think you're going through an unpleasant situation with the county, and I'm not asking about the county." I cut in. Short, clean, not loud, but enough to stop her. Ellen sat at the end of the table, silent, but her eyes never left Linda. Linda paused for a beat, then continued. "I have nothing to do with any report." A perfect answer. Short, clear, impossible to prove wrong. I nodded slowly, as if I accepted it, but I didn't. "Good," I said. I stood up, walked over to the cabinet, took out a folder, walked back to the table. Not fast, not slow, just the right pace. Linda watched me. Her eyes started to change, not as confident as before. I opened the folder, took out the first page, placed it on the table. "This is your pre-application," I said. Linda didn't touch it, but her eyes read it. "I know you filed it 6 months ago." Silence. I placed the second page. "These are the county regulations. A project like this requires signatures from adjacent property owners." Linda stayed quiet, but I saw her shoulders stiffen. I placed the third page. "Rachel's analysis. And this." I tapped the paper lightly. "Is the right-of-way on your land." This time, Linda couldn't fully hold it together. Her eyes shifted, just slightly, but enough. Ellen saw it too. She didn't say anything, but I knew. I placed the final page. The invoice. $13,800. No explanation needed. Just let it sit there. 4 document, 4 facts. Lined up, no drama, but undeniable. Linda looked at all of them, then looked at me. This time, she didn't speak right away. No prepared response. No perfect smile. Just calculation. Fast. Precise. "I understand," she finally said. Her voice lower, more real. "So, What do you want? That was the moment. Not when she admitted anything, but when she stopped denying. An innocent person keeps denying. Someone who knows exactly where they stand asks for the price. I sat back down. No rush. I have 3 things, I said. Linda gave a small nod. Go ahead. But I want you to hear everything before you respond. She nodded. Ellen leaned forward slightly, listening. I want you to reimburse the cost of repairing the dock. I touched the invoice. The full amount. Linda opened her mouth. I raised my hand slightly. You said you'd listen. She stopped. Her eyes no longer relaxed. Second, I continued, I want a written commitment. Any issue in the future, you come to me directly before filing any report. Silence. I looked straight at her. No county. No anonymous complaints. Direct. Linda let out a slow breath. And the third? I placed my hand on the last document. The right of way. I spoke slowly. You will acknowledge it. In writing. And file it with the county. Linda leaned back slightly. For the first time, she looked like she had been pushed back. You're asking for a lot, she said. I shook my head. No. What I'm asking for existed before you got here. I leaned forward, my voice low. Clear. You're just restoring the balance. The air grew heavy. No one spoke for a few seconds. Then Linda said, You understand this could delay my project. I do. You understand I could take the legal route. I do. I looked straight at her. And I know what that route costs. Linda went quiet. Longer this time. Then she stood up. Not rushed. Not angry. But no longer fully in control. I need time to think, she said. Of course. She walked to the door. Stopped. Didn't turn back. As for the report, she said, her voice low. I did what I thought was appropriate at the time. No apology. No admission. But enough. She walked out. The door closed. Ellen let out a breath. So, is it over? I shook my head. Not yet. Do you think she'll agree? I looked out at the lake. Linda's dock was quiet, but not peaceful like before. I think. I paused. She just realized she's no longer controlling the game. And when someone like Linda realizes that, they don't walk away. They come back. But this time, not with a smile. With a number. She didn't come back. Her lawyer did. The call came on the afternoon of the 4th day. Unknown number. On the other end was a male voice. Calm, clear, without emotion. This is Andrew Cole, legal representative for Miss Linda Carver. I sat down before answering. I'm listening. No small talk. No introductions beyond that. My client has reviewed your proposal. I looked out the window. The lake was still, but underneath, everything was moving. And we are prepared to accept your second and third conditions. The commitment, the right of way. I said nothing. Waited. As for the dock repair cost, he continued, my client proposes a reimbursement of $11,500. A lower number. Not a refusal. A negotiation. I closed my eyes for a second. Not to think. To feel. This was the moment everything became clear. No more emotion. No more story. Just numbers. Why not the full amount? I asked. Andrew didn't hesitate. My client believes this is a reasonable resolution, intended to settle the matter without pursuing more complex legal steps. Lawyer language. Clean. Neutral. But the meaning was clear. They wanted this over. Fast. Clean. At the lowest cost possible. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch. On the other end, Andrew stayed silent too. 2 people. 2 sides. Measuring each other. I'll call you back, I said. Of course. The call ended. Ellen was standing nearby. How much? $11,500. She frowned. Less. Yeah. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away. I walked outside, down to the dock, sat in the familiar chair. A light breeze. Still water. Everything. Peaceful. Like nothing had ever happened. I looked out. Toward Linda's dock. No one there. No movement. But I knew. She was waiting for my answer. I thought about $13,800. I thought about 3 weeks of repairs. I thought about every board that had been taken apart, every piece of memory cut away. Then I thought about what mattered more. The right of way, the commitment, control. Ellen walked down and sat beside me. What are you weighing? I'm weighing what matters. Money or principle? I shook my head. No. Then what? I'm weighing the outcome. Ellen looked at me. What do you want from this? I stayed quiet for a few seconds, then answered. I want it to end. Not a big victory. Not destroying her. Just an end. No more pressure. No more games. No more quiet moves. Ellen nodded slowly. Then, is $11,500 enough? I looked at the dock. It was still here, still itself. Not perfect, but still standing. Enough, I said. I stood up, went back inside, called Andrew. I agree. No further negotiation. No delay. Andrew responded immediately. I'll have the documents prepared. 2 weeks later, everything was signed. Clear. No hidden clauses. No traps. I read every line. Rachel read it too. She nodded. It's solid. I signed. Linda signed. Not in the same room. Not at the same time. Just 2 signatures on the same set of papers. A transaction. Nothing more. Nothing less. The check arrived one morning. Same kind of envelope as the first time. But this time, it wasn't a threat. I held it. Didn't feel victory. Didn't feel joy. Just the end of a cycle. Ellen looked at me. How do you feel? I thought for a moment. Lighter. She smiled. That's enough. I nodded. Not every story needs a loud ending. Not every Karen story ends with someone falling apart. Sometimes, winning means keeping what's yours and making the other person understand. They picked the wrong one to push. I set the check down on the table, looked out at the lake, quiet, like nothing had ever happened. But I knew something had changed. Not the dock, not the land, but the way Linda would look at me from now on. Not as a quiet old man by the lake, but as someone who knows exactly where he stands. We didn't become friends, and maybe that's the most honest part of this entire story. 3 months after everything was signed, Linda's project began. Not loud, not flashy, but clear. Trucks showed up. New stakes were driven into the ground. Machines started running early in the morning. The lake, once quiet, began to carry the sounds of metal, engines, and change. I stood on my dock and looked over. Not with anger, but with observation. Linda was there too, standing in the middle of her project, giving directions, talking to contractors, confident, in control, as if everything had returned to her plan. But I knew it wasn't the same anymore. The project wasn't as large as the original plan. No large storage area. No expansion like she had intended. Just a version that was smaller, tighter, safer. What she could build after everything had been adjusted. One afternoon, I ran into Linda on the path between our houses. No plan, no preparation, just coincidence. She stopped when she saw me. So did I. 1 second, 2 seconds. Long enough for both of us to understand. Daniel, she said. Her tone was normal, not cold, not warm, just normal. Linda. No one smiled. No one showed discomfort. Just 2 people who understood exactly where they stood. The work is progressing well, she said. I can see that. I hope it won't cause you any trouble. I looked at her. A polite sentence. But underneath, an acknowledgement. I don't have a problem with it, I replied. She nodded. A small nod. Then kept walking. Nothing more. No turning back. That night, Ellen asked me, do you think she learned anything? I thought about it. Not quickly. Not carelessly. I don't know. You don't care? I shook my head. No. Ellen looked at me. Then what do you care about? I looked out the window. The lights from Linda's new marina reflected softly on the water. Not as quiet as before. but not chaotic either. Just different. I care that this ended the right way. Ellen smiled. The right way. Yeah. Not with revenge. Not with destruction. But with understanding. Understanding the law. Understanding your position. And not letting anyone push you out of it. A year later, I still sit on the dock every morning. Same old chair. Same cup of coffee. Same view. Everything is still there. But I see it differently. Not as a place to escape the world, but as a place that reminds me what I managed to keep. The old wooden piece, with the carved year 1987, still hangs on the wall behind me. My father's handwriting, simple, unpolished, but lasting. The way he lived, the way he taught me. Build something, hold on to it, and when necessary, protect it. Not loudly, not for show, just do it right. The lake in the morning is quiet. In the distance, the marina starts to fill with people. Boats move. Soft sounds. Life continues, the way it always does. I take a sip of coffee, thinking about everything that happened. If I had reacted right away, if I had gotten angry, if I had signed that paper while I was tired, everything would have been different. Very different. That's something not everyone understands. Acting fast isn't always strength. Sometimes, slowing down is power. Understanding clearly is the advantage. And staying calm is what makes you unpredictable. I set the coffee down. Look out at the water. If you've ever been in a situation where someone tried to use rules, regulations, or the system to push you into a corner, remember one thing. Don't react too quickly. Read. Ask. Understand. Because sometimes, you're not as powerless as you think. You just don't know what you're holding yet. And if this story reminds you of something you've been through, share it. Not to complain, but to let others know they're not the only ones. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that aren't loud, but real, stay. Because sometimes, the quiet battles are the ones you remember the most.